Mr. Bowman?
Here.
Ms. Frishy?
Here.
Mr. Greeno?
Here.
Mr. Hellman?
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer? Here. Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Slough? Ms. Warnicki? Here. Mr. Wobser?
Present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Hellman, I will accept a motion to excuse Mr. Slough.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Mr. Slough is in South Carolina, so might be watching us, but not here this evening. All those in favor of excusing Mr. Slough, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. He is excused. I will entertain a motion to accept the previous minutes of City Council. Mr. Palmer? So moved. Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the September 6, 2022 council meeting minutes to be approved, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. They are approved. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-ons, replacements, or removals from tonight's agenda?
Yes, sir. We have a removal of the first Planning and Zoning Committee report that was submitted in error. It is the minutes from the August 11th meeting instead of the September 8th. Replacements of replacements of the purchase agreement for Bank Street and East Hobart Street letter. We're replacing page 4, and an amendment of ordinance 2022-081, the legislation for our salary ordinance. And so I would motion that we do the removal and the 2 replacements.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the changes, removals, or replacements, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. They are accepted. We have no proclamations. We have no recognitions or retirement resolutions. We do have 1 petition. I'm sorry, 2 petitions.
An alley vacation request for 119 West McPherson from Anthony Coyne and Diane Colta. They're the attorneys for the applicant. Is it Manzoor? Gavin LPA is requesting to vacate a 15-foot alley between West McPherson and Lake Cascades Parkway, formerly Vance Avenue, east of Douglas Park, abutting Sherman Addition Block G and in lots number 16815 through 18622, as well as a zoning amendment request for the same location of 119 West McPherson Street to change the zoning from R2 medium lot residential to C1 local commercial.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
This item and this alley vacation request and the next zoning amendment request for 119 West McPherson is generating a lot of conversation, especially in my neighborhood. And just so citizens know, these will be referred to City Planning Commission and the Planning Zoning Committee. City Planning Commission will meet on these and discuss this on October 13th at 9 a.m. And that is a place for public input. Planning and Zoning Committee will meet on October 13th at noon to discuss these items. So just for the citizens watching and that have interest in these items, those October 13th, 9 a.m., that's the date and time you want to know.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, this will be referred to the City Planning Commission and the Planning and Zoning Committee. Okay, both of those will be referred to commission and committee. Written communications, we have none. We have 4 oral communications this evening. We have Tricia Valasek, who's the executive director of Raise the Bar, would like to give City Council an update. Tricia, you have 4 minutes. And then I yank you out. No. That does not include any discussion with council members. And council members can extend your time if needed.
All right, so thank you. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you all. Every year I come and kind of give you an update on Raise the Bar activity, especially because you all have generously invested in the work that we do. And so this year I'm really proud to share with you how we have leveraged the $30,000 investment that you put into Raise the Bar this year. That has basically turned into a $4,000 or 4,000% return on your investment, because we have turned your $30,000 into an additional $1.2 million for this community. Without your matching funds, we would not be eligible to go after a particular state grant, which is the Industry Sector Partnership Grants out of the governor's office. We have received that grant 2 years in a row. Each time is $250,000. I must raise $125,000 of local funding to match those costs. That all gets reinvested back into our workforce. We have focused a lot on manufacturing. I know there is another one of these grants coming out from the governor's office very soon. Therefore, we will have to have another $125,000 of investment. But this is the kind of return that we can get when we have entities like the city, like the county, like our community foundation and the businesses investing in the work of Raise the Bar. I'm also really pleased to share with you that Raise the Bar, Hancock County, we are one of only 15 partnerships in Ohio that's endorsed by the Ohio Manufacturers Association. Because of our endorsement with them, we are bringing $930,000 to our community for the next 3 years to build our manufacturing workforce. And that is part of the Ohio Manufacturers Association's $23 million award through the Good Jobs Challenge grant. Your small seed of funding helps us bring much more investment to our community. I am pleased to say that when I go to a statewide summit with partnerships like Raise the Bar, our community is very, very far ahead of others. And it's because of the leadership that we have here, people like the mayor who sits on Raise the Bar's presidency role. We've had formal council members on our board. But it's because of those players and the people who are investing in our work that we are driving a lot of change. And we, as you can see on the back side of that, we're maximizing the assets that we have in this community. We're not asking to go add more things. We are trying to streamline what we do already have and maximize its potential. We're continuing to do this, and we're seeing tremendous results already. We're continuing to focus on manufacturing because that's where so many of our jobs are right now, and the demand is there. But we'll also start seeing how we can focus on other industries in this community. So I just want to thank you for having invested in us for so many years. I would love to see that investment continue because your match does matter. It brings a lot more, as you can see, funding to this community. But just continue to consider the work that we do and how we can play a role in shaping this community to be exactly what the people would like it to be, but as well as yourselves. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes,
Ms.
Mr. Hahn.
Frischi.
I'm glad you came. So just for the public that's listening, like for the 250,000 that we're getting on that match, like what's an example that we've given it to? And then the 930,000 that you've brought in, give them some examples, because I'm thinking maybe that's one of the projects over at City Mission with the welding. So that's
No,
not
that is not part of the work that we do.
Oh, that's not.
They are doing that on their own.
So teach me what you're doing with this money a little bit better, like just some detailed.
Yep. The $250,000 that we have right now, we are investing back into leadership development training for our youth. We are focusing a lot on the K-12 school system, helping them fulfill their obligations to the state through their business advisory councils they're all required to be a part of. We are shaping and guiding that, not duplicating their efforts. We are also making sure there are teachers who are aware of the jobs that their students could be eligible for, getting them into those spaces. And then with the $930,000 award, that's a very tailored project. It'll be about recruiting individuals to this community. So again, raising our taxes, the tax base that we can have for our economic gain, putting more people into jobs, upskilling them, but also helping them overcome barriers that they might have to employment at the same time.
Any other, Mr. Hellman?
Welcome, Trish. I should probably know the answer to this, but can you tell me how big is your staff? And I had another question there. How big is your budget?
I am a staff of one.
Staff of one?
Yep, myself. Any work that I have extra looks to be like a contract kind of thing at the same time. My budget every year outside of the grants is $150,000.
Any other
Thank
questions?
Congratulations.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? Mr. Wobser?
Trish, thanks for the update. That was really good. Our funding, I know we've not renewed that. And it was in our last budget. When does our funding run out? I'm sure you know that,
You included it for sure this fiscal year.
just for this year.
Yep.
Is that correct, Mayor?
Correct.
So we'll need to look, Mayor, are you going to include that in your budget this year, or we'll discuss that separately? Sorry, Trish, I didn't mean to throw you off the podium.
Yeah, it would be my intention to include it. That's one of the reasons I know as we're starting to go into the budget season, this is an item that has come up. As Tricia mentioned, I think it's really valuable dollars. As she just mentioned, $150,000 is pretty much her operating budget, and that covers pretty much her expenses, advertising, some of those nitty-gritty expenses for the manufacturing day, website, content, the contract that she does regular, kind of contracting out different work as needed. She did have Austin Gardner working for her for a while as a contractor, and he got a great coaching job in Southern Ohio, so he left us. But I feel like the dollars that we are investing are really important because she does need to prove when applying for these grants that they have that local partnership support. And when it's coming from local government, that really encourages those state and federal agencies to say, all right, the local community is stepping up. We can invest in it as well. And one other item, Tricia mentioned it a little bit, that this organization was formed and kind of originally focused on manufacturing because that's such a core portion of our community. But we're starting to really build off of that framework and working right now. She's working with the Health and Human Services kind of workforce committee, where all of our agencies related to health and human services are working together to say, okay, how do we build the workforce that we need? What are those partnership opportunities? What are the education tracks? How do we educate? And so we've really been able to build out that framework around manufacturing, and now we're able to apply it to different industries. So I'm super excited for how we'll see that continue to grow. But obviously, a lot of work that Tricia's having to do, but she's doing a great job.
No doubt. Just as a reminder to council, in years past, we've, when council has invested in local 501c3s, we've always had a seat on the board to make sure that the funds were being spent properly and other reasons. And that was really one of the contingencies that we had for spending this type of money. Currently, the mayor is on the board. In fact, Mayor, you're president, vice president? I can't remember.
President.
This year and
President and next 2-year term, but city council does not have a seat on the board. The council, or their board, decided that they would rotate funders off, correct, Tricia? And I don't want to get that wrong.
It was originally, yes, that they would be on there for perpetuity, if you will, but the bylaws changed, and therefore we are having the health of the board change over every so often.
Right. So one of the reasons that we only did 1 year of funding was that we would have this discussion to see if we continue to do that with where we're at currently or not. Probably something that we'll discuss at budget time.
Any other questions or comments for Tricia? Hearing none. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the good work.
Thank you.
Our second speaker tonight is Andrew Corsa. He's from AP Transmission. He'd like to give us an update on the underground transmission line project.
Good evening, Council, men and women. Appreciate you for entertaining me again here. My name is Drew Corso. I'm the project manager for AEP for the project that we like to call Findlay to 5th. That's the underground transmission project build that's going from Findlay Station at Putnam and Hurd, down Hurd Avenue, over Lincoln Street to the Marathon substation, just behind the Marathon substation. I was here maybe 2 months ago, I think it was, and gave a project kickoff kind of update meeting, and council asked that I come back and give regular updates. So I'm here back to kind of give you a lay of the land of where we are and where we're going. In short, progress is going very well. We are on track as far as schedule-wise. We have been working very closely with the City of Findlay Engineering Department, with Jeremy Kalb and his his team, and we've also, per our prior commitments, been reaching out to the public, and they also have a mechanism by which they're able to contact AEP, and then we're able to resolve any kind of issues or problems that may arise. So we've got a good circular path of communication with the public and businesses. This particular update is fairly critical because we're getting very, very close to Lincoln and Main Street, which, as you know, is extremely busy. So we've been working very closely with Jeremy Kalb, as well as Marathon, their campus, the Hancock Hotel, a variety of the other businesses from basically Chief Everly's station all the way up to Hardin Avenue on Main Street to make sure that the businesses know exactly what we're doing and when we're doing it, because it's going to affect traffic flow patterns in that area. So we're working very, very hard with the businesses to make the least amount of footprint and irritation to the public, in incorporating their needs and wants as much as we possibly can. I've given you a packet there that kind of breaks down. The first page, past the title page, is just a general view. If you haven't seen the actual construction itself, we're digging in the ground and putting conduit in the ground to accept new power cables. I think the next page after that is a overview of what the line route is, and then subsequent pages are phases 1, 2, 3, 3.5, and 4, which you'll see has a duration on each one of them, but it gives you a traffic flow pattern on each phase, and then a duration for how long that phase will be done. And the area marked in green hash marks is the area that will be closed. It'll be closed for the duration, and the road shift and patterns have been communicated in with all the public and the immediate businesses around there. So we should finish up Duck Bank construction. I think it's December 8th, give or take, depending on how things go. It's underground work, so it's precarious, and oftentimes we find things that we didn't know about or maybe not in the right position or where we thought they were. We did have a last-second update. I realize now that the dates that you have on there, we may be pushing those by a week so we don't interfere with the homecoming parade that's coming through here. Jeremy just let me know that, and that we're happy to do that. So please keep those. I apologize that the dates aren't right, but we just realized that here pretty much as I was walking in the door. So again, per our commitment here to lessen the impact, we're gonna hold off and let the parade go down in Marshall where it normally does. Nope, that's it.
That's your 4 minutes, unless council. Mr. Russell.
I'd like them to hear them continue, especially since the dates
Wait a
are
second.
changed.
Mr. Palmer, all those in favor of continuing, say aye. Any opposed, nay? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm long-winded, so thank you, Mr. Harrington.
Follow the rules.
So we'll be finishing up on the 8th. We're pushing those dates by a week. If need be, I can get to the mayor and Jeremy an updated spreadsheet or a PowerPoint for council to have if you have something that's actually correct, if that's what you'd like. And then next steps after that, we've been working with Jeremy on, we're going to hold off on paving until the spring. Jeremy, his department's working on some other paving in the area, and we're going to work together to kind of bundle some packages together to do it in the correct time of year, so you're going to get the best product. And at the same time, the city's getting a little bit of benefit of us repaving some areas where he's going to dig into, or his department's going to dig into. So there's some economic benefit to do that with the coordination between two of us. They're able to dig down, and we're already there, so we'll go ahead and take care of the road. So I think that's pretty much next steps.
Questions? Mr. Russell.
So, Mr. Corso, to confirm, we would see the first closure on Main Street starting on October 8th. Is that Saturday instead of October 1st as is listed? I'm looking at page 4, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll start doing road closure on the 8th. They will work that Saturday and do that?
It'll be the following Monday.
Okay.
So by a week, I mean like calendar.
And to
days.
confirm, you have talked to those businesses, including the Guitar Ranch and all those on the west side of Main Street across from the hotel, and they are aware of the no parking?
We have talked to the Hancock Hotel, and we have talked to the Marathon campus. We are in the process right now of talking with our right-of-way folks are talking with everybody on the east and west side, from Lincoln all the way to Hardin.
Is it, and I notice it says no parking there.
Correct.
That's a tough one, especially for these businesses. That's a real tough one. There's no way to both block the intersection either with more physical barriers and allow the cars to, I'm kind of looking at you, Jeremy, too, a little bit on this, to allow the cars to re-enter Main Street traffic heading south.
Yeah, I can let Jeremy talk to it, but we've got some ODOT restrictions that we have.
Yeah, if you follow the guidelines and stuff, it's going to create potential conflict points that could cause a potential accident because you're going to have cars pretty much coming out. I know it's like normal roadway, you have the same situation, but when you restrict 2 lanes down to 1 and you're also merging them over to a different lane and then you have parked cars coming out, they're not expecting those. It's a safety concern. I know, that was kind of something we talked about. I brought up was the parking, but after kind of talking through it and what the closure is going to look like, I could see a potential problem, or I want to make sure there's no problems with conflict points. So one of the things we're going to be doing at Lincoln Street is kind of like what we did at Lima, where we're going to turn that light into a blink mode, so that way north-south traffic can keep moving and we're not creating a choke point at Lincoln completely. So I just see it as a safety concern.
I'm just wondering about alternatives for parking for those businesses that are highly reliant on street parking near their business. And Jeremy, how far is the no parking going to go past Subway? Is it going to go north of that alley at I think it's Smarty Pants and Subway and the bike shop?
Yeah, it will extend up there to the Wilson area. But we'll look at what we've done with, I guess, residential areas that have apartments and stuff in a building. We've looked at temporary parking or something like that. So I actually got to talk with Drew tomorrow, so that is something we can discuss on temporary parking locations for these businesses as well.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Our next speaker is Michael Stoner, who would like to speak about the South Blanchard Street alley vacation.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having me here today. My main concern is safety. Safety for my children, safety for my animals, and just overall safety for my entire family. My petition is for 205 feet. All of my abutting neighbors at 1415, myself is on Blanchard Street, 711 and 714, one on 5th, 714 on 6th Street, have all signed this. I'm not petitioning to close the entire alley, I'm just petitioning to close my portion of the alley. I have followed the request to vacate. I understand all property owners were notified that do not abut the property, or do not abut the alley, I'm sorry. My request is for the safety of my children again, and I was told it would cause a hardship for the rest of the people down the alley. They would still have access off of Graceland. I have been caused hardship myself with the closing of the previous 2 alleys that used to intersect that alley. Now, I do not have a crystal ball, and I cannot predict the future of hardships or any future projects that anybody could run into. However, I do know a precedence was set in 2013 for Bill Johns, who petitioned to close an alley between 3rd and 4th Street. Only partial of it, not all of it. All of my particulars equal the petition that he put in, only to vacate a partial of it, not all of it. Both are unimproved leaving only one way in and one way out of ingress and ingress. Both gravel to a point, and then they're grass. Both have power lines and to remain an easement access for AEP or anybody else for maintenance purposes. I'm not trying to restrict that. Staff recommended FCPC approval of Bill John's Alley. Planning Commission said no to that partial alley being closed, but Grant Russell went against them and voted to pass it. I feel I'm being discriminated against, and my property rights should be the same as Bill John's. As in the case of the 3rd and 4th Street alley, some of the property owners are in opposition and do not abut the property, same as mine. I would like to vacate, in the same portion of the alley that I would like to vacate. Judy I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, Scrimshaw advised Bill Johns to reach an agreement with the abutting neighbors and non-abutting neighbors to access for maintenance. Bill Johns stated that not all members would agree to this. The partial alley was still closed, even after that. All of my abutting neighbors, all the ones that abut next to it, they all agree to close the section I have petitioned for. I have received signatures from not abutting property owners here in the past couple of weeks that are now in favor of it. Councilwoman Holly Frischi had also visited the neighborhood and some of the other non-abutting property owners, whom one was actually not in favor of, and she had spoke with him and he is now in favor of. In total, I have 11 in favor of my petition. In closing, I am asking for my property rights to be the same as Bill John's. Big difference is I'm petitioning for the safety of my children, where he didn't have anything listed on his. It's not a land grab, as I have been accused of. In those packets I gave you, if you've noticed, I have power lines that run right next to my house. There's no way, sorry.
Sorry, that's your 4 minutes. Ms. Frischi,
I'd like to allow him to continue and finish his statement.
need a second. Mr. Russell, all those in favor of allowing him to continue, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? I'm sorry, but you can continue now.
Thank you, sir. This is not a land grab, as I have been accused of. I have power lines that run right next to my house, so there's no way that I can possibly improve upon my house or my garage into that alleyway. There's power lines there. There's no way I can do that. I would like the committee report to be denied and to draw up legislation to vacate the portion that I have attached, that I have asked for the safety of my kids, and give it the 3 full readings, and please help me get this closed. That is all. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Ms. Frischi.
I don't know if we want me to wait for my comments till we get to the committee report, or if you want me to speak now. Is there a preference?
Right now, it would be questions for the speaker.
If you did not get this alley vacated, Mr. Stoner, what do you think can you get anything accomplished, or is it gonna be similar to the property on 3rd and 4th Street, where the property owners were not in agreement, but that they went ahead and did that vacation?
I'm hoping that I can be in agreement with the neighbors, that if they still would like to get access down there for tree trimmings and other general purpose maintenance that they have at the back of their property, I'm not trying to deny them that. I'm trying to deny the riffraff that I've seen going in and out of there. I have kids that play outside with me, and I've included in the packet, I've got pictures of them out there playing with us. My garage literally is right next to this alley, and as much as you try to watch your children sometimes, they can be quick. And if they're out there inside the garage working with me, and all of a sudden they dart out from, the side of the corner of that garage, and there's a vehicle going down there, they can strike my child and potentially kill my child.
So, do you understand that that's like an unimproved alley and it's a utility easement forever?
Absolutely, utility ever. Yep.
So, if the vacation discussion were to continue this evening and we were able to make sure all of our citizens are treated equally, how would you what do you see your vacation looking like? I mean, are you gonna plant a tree? Are you?
No, ma'am. I've spoke with the abutting property owner that lives right next to me. We're both in agreement. What we would do is we would put just a metal pole on either side, and we would run just a chain in between the two. So when a property owner comes up and says, hey, I would like to get back there to use that, or if AEP says, I would like to get back there to my property so I can remove some trees, all they have to do is just unhook the chain, go about their business, and then come right back out and hook the chain back up. I'm just trying to create a physical barrier so cars and other riffraff know that this is not just a freeway where you can come in and out of. Granted, like I said, most of the alley is grass, and a lot of people go slow through there. They mind that because not everybody has a 4x4 or an off-road vehicle and want to go Baja. As soon as they hit the back part of my property, which is where I'm trying to petition to close it, it turns into stone all the way from there to South Blanchard Street, and speed is increased exponentially right through there. They think it's a drag strip right through there. We've had cars pulling out of there and literally throwing stones on my wife's car.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Wobson?
Mr. Stoner, how many cars go down this alley?
It's not a high traffic alley, but when it is used,
So it is used.
it is used, absolutely.
Okay.
There's property owners that go back here to do stuff, and again, I'm not trying to deny them that to use that. I would love for them to still do that. I'm trying to keep everybody else out. Just in the past probably 2 weeks, we've had probably a handful of cars who don't even live there go back through there, and then all of a sudden realize that they can't go all the way through and turn back around on my portion of it. And they're doing it at a high rate of speed with no regards to safety for anybody.
Of the Planning and Zoning and City Planning Committee meetings, how many votes in favor of this vacation did you garner?
Holly, would you be able to help me out with that one?
You're asking the committee report that you have in front of you?
Well, there was two. You had Planning and Zoning and City Planning. How many votes in favor?
So planning and zoning, our
Denied.
committee, it was myself against denying the petition, and the
Okay.
rest were in favor. And as far as the planning commission goes, planning commission has followed their preferences of not having, their preference is we don't vacate a partial alley. Then sometimes as we don't vacate a partial alley unless it has a crossover alley that has another way of in or out. So they recommended to the property owner in the minutes, if you read it, it says that they wanted him to go talk to more of his property owners.
Which I did. I've talked to over a majority, and I
Thank
have
you,
over
Mr.
a
Stoner.
majority. Oh, sorry.
So how many votes did you get in favor of the vacation? One. You have yours.
In
Was-
favor of the vacation, his petition had
Correct.
how many signatures on it?
No, not signatures from Planning Commission. The one how many people voted in favor of it on the commission?
How many people voted in favor of the planning commission report?
No, on Planning Commission.
Yes, the morning 9 a.m. meeting that the mayor runs.
Correct. How many people on
They
that
voted,
commission?
they voted against the
So there was
recommendation.
nobody on that commission that voted in favor
Not
of
in the
it.
minutes. I know there was some discussion there of some kind, and I wasn't at the 9 a.m. meeting, so maybe
All
you
right.
can fill him in.
Yeah, there was no votes in support. We had originally, were going to table it to try to give them some time to get additional petitions, and then we realized that really we couldn't amend the petition as presented. Instead, we denied it and requested that he get a petition to vacate the entire alley because there was citizens there that had spoke, that they utilized it as an access point to get to their property.
Very good, thank you.
I just want to give you a little more on that follow-up.
I'm sorry, there was a question for you directly. Did you answer that?
So the question that he had for me was planning and zoning denied the recommendation. They recommended the entire alley. That is fine, right? Because we have a planning and zoning committee through city council that brings the legislation, right? So we can disagree with that sometimes, and clearly we did that in 2014 for the property on 3rd Street going to 4th Street, which is the exact same example. The only difference is they were requesting it because they used the alley as their driveway, not for safety or any other reason. Plus, the other property owners on the alley with the recommendation from Planning Commission was to get all alley in agreeance, and they said, the property owner said, that's not gonna happen, it's in the minutes. So, what they're saying.
Excuse me, but Mr.
I-
Lobser has the floor.
My question's been answered. I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Frishy, now I can acknowledge you and you can, and again, remember the questions are for the speaker. not-
Well, but the questions were just for me.
Yeah.
If you want to clarify that, so please do that.
That was asked and answered. Now I'm calling on you if you have any further questions for the speaker.
Do you feel that you're being discriminated against?
I do.
Because you're not being treated the same as the property owner on Third Street with the recommendation from
Yes.
Planning Commission, deny the recommendation? Do you understand why they denied it?
Yes.
You understand their preference?
Yes.
There is no policy for Planning Commission, there's a preference, and you
Correct.
understand that. I understand that, I respect that.
Correct.
Do you understand when Grant Russell chaired the committee in 14,
Yes.
that they went against Planning Commission for the exact same request that you were asking, a
Yes, ma'am.
partial alley vacation with no other ingress or egress, and they did not have 100% support on that alley?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Hellman?
If I may,
Yes, sir.
can you clarify for me, what was the result when you tried to vacate the entire alley? Thank you.
I haven't put a petition in to vacate the entire alley. I put a petition in just to close my portion of the alley. Just the 200, I believe it's approximately 205 feet.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yes.
I thought there was a statement that was made that there was an effort to vacate the entire alley, which I think would be the preference of the Planning Commission as well as the Planning Committee, so that we don't create a stub alley in there. I think you understand that as well.
Correct.
All right.
I was just,
Thank you.
Ms. Frishy?
So on that property, you could have, if you would have come first, you could have done your petition because there would have been an additional ingress and egress.
yeah, I wasn't born before the 50s, so I wasn't able to do that. Sorry.
And do you understand, what you're petitioning, do you believe you followed the process as written out on the application?
Yes, ma'am. I feel that I have. I needed the signatures of all of the abutting property owners. I have 100% signatures of all abutting property owners. To my knowledge, that is the requirement.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Our next speaker is Alfred Benavides, 1411 South Blanchard Street. He'd also like to speak about the alley vacation. Again, 4 minutes. I'll gavel you down and, at the 4-minute mark. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Alfred. So I just bought this house at 1411 South Blanchard Street. I lived on an alley before, and I had a lot of problems with people coming down the alley, people actually smoking dope in my alley, and I since moved to South Blanchard. And I have noticed that there's people that will drive. I live one house away from the alley, and I've seen people drive in, turn around real quick, and then drive out real fast. And during that balloon thing, there was people, that traffic was lined up from 6th Street all the way to almost to Sandusky. And there was people getting antsy to get on 6th Street, would turn in that alley, then back out. Then they didn't decide what were they going to do. They tried to get back in to turn, and it was kind of like a traffic jam. And I only live like 4 houses from 6th Street. But again, I feel for him because I've seen his little girl come out of the side door, which faces the alley, and she goes right toward the alley. And I've seen people just drive right out with no hesitation to who's out there. And I've also seen a person come out of that alley that didn't belong there, cut across the house next to me, go across my yard, look in my car, and then walk behind my house and then walk to the neighbors. In other words, he trespassed. I just moved there, but he didn't belong there. I could tell he was one of these persons that, probably street person. And, it's a concern for me because I have a lot of stuff. And I can't even leave my garage door open. I lock my house even when I go out to the garage. So I never know who's up there. And a young girl just bought the house next to me. So I'm concerned with her too. Young lady, so. But the only thing is, again, it's the traffic. I'm concerned about that. Just, you never know who's going to be there. That's all I have to say.
Any questions for Mr. Benavides? Ms. Frisch?
You referenced safety, and you said that Mr. Soner's daughter comes out and goes towards the alley.
Well, their door faces the alley, and you never know if that little girl's going to go toward the alley or toward the garage. And I have great-grandchildren, and my boy's, 3, and I lived on an alley, and he darted right out and off the yard right into the alley without even thinking. And my door is behind the house, not beside the house. So,
When you referenced the safety, how she came out, I didn't want it to be misconstrued. Do you realize where the property line is on that alley in comparison from their door?
well, I don't know, I'd say probably, 15 feet maybe?
No.
No?
It's right at the door. There,
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
That alley, sir, is access to their property, but the neighborhood was built so long ago, there is nothing. It's the door, and then it's the alley, which is not their property. So I just want you,
That's
I
what I
want
was gonna
everybody
say.
to understand and make sure you understood. So
Yeah,
thank you.
That's what I always thought, it was the alley, but then now that you mention it, I see where his garage is. It's got to be over here, and the alley's right there. So, yeah, it is a concern.
Yeah, and that side door is right on the property line.
Right.
Thank you.
That's all I
Any
have
other
to say.
questions or comments? Thank you. That concludes our oral communications. We will now move on to reports of municipal officers and departments.
Officer shareholders disclosure form from the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control for Bright Road Beverage LLC located at 1700 Romick Parkway in Findlay for a C1, C2, and D6 liquor permit. A check of the records show no criminal record for those who applied.
Mr. Wobser,
Make a motion that no objection be filed.
second, Ms. Frishy. All those in favor that no objection be filed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. No objection will be filed.
Officer shareholders disclosure form from the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control for MMG Findlay LLC located at 1831 Tiffin Avenue for a C1, C2, and D6 liquor permit. A check of the records show no criminal record for those who applied.
Mr. Wobser,
Make a motion that no objection be filed.
second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor that no objection be filed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. No objection will be filed.
Officer shareholders disclosure form from the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control for Shastra? Shashi Street. Karuna LLC doing business as Smoke and Stuff located at 1406 North Main Street for C1, C2, and D6 liquor permit. A check of the record show no criminal record for those who applied.
Mr. Wobser,
One more time, make a motion that no objection be filed.
second, Ms. Warnicki. All those in favor that no objection be filed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. No objection will be filed.
City Planning Commission staff report for September 8th, 2022.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Treasurer's reconciliation report for August 31st, 2022.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Police Departmental Activities Report for August 2022.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Summary financial reports year-to-date for August 31st, 2022.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Municipal Court Activities Report for August 2022.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Board of Zoning Appeals minutes for August 11th, 2022.
Questions or comments? Minutes to be filed.
A letter from Chief Robert Ring regarding state grant funds for drug overdose response and prevention.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from City Auditor Jim Stashak regarding RLF administration.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Calb regarding AIP 27 Runway 725 Rehab 352-93200 and AIP 27 Taxiway Rehab Design 3529-3400.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Calb regarding City Restroom Accessibility Project number 319-25100.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Calb regarding Municipal Bridge Inspection Program.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
So Jeremy, with this, so they inspect, they come up with recommendations, and we would expect inspections to happen, like what timeline?
This is yearly. You have to do yearly bridge inspections. We've participated in this program ever since I've been here and even before then. But ODOT takes care of this. They do this for municipalities underneath 50,000. They take care of all the necessary bridge inspections. If there's something that comes up that is needing fixed, such as the structure or decking or something like that, they will give us those recommendations.
Do they put a timeline then on following their recommendations? So I'm sorry, I don't recall this from previous years, but.
On how soon we need to put them,
Yes, sir.
that would be part of their recommendation on, this needs to be
But-
fixed in the next so many years.
Standard operating procedure being in this.
Yep,
thing.
yep,
Okay.
have to have these.
Any other questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Service Safety Director Martin regarding liquid carbon dioxide purchase for 2023.
Questions or comment? Ms. Frishy?
Hey, Jeremy, last council meeting, we had a lot of discussion and things happened with regards to going out and getting chemicals and such. This one here, I've thought more about how our contract wasn't being upheld and how prices of things have gone up. When they tell you that they're not going to honor a contract, whether it's the one from 2 weeks ago or this one here, do they provide you documentation on the bid process to come up for, like, for instance, this one, they're saying $500 per ton? Do they give you documentation, or do you request documentation to know where these numbers are coming in and why they're coming in higher? I had asked Robin an email, and he's obviously not here tonight, so.
So like the pricing is kind of what they talked about last week with, seeing where the actual market value is right now with it, what other communities are seeing, and just having the communication with those supply companies as well, knowing where they're sitting with those amount, or, with their current rate, what it could be and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a lot of communication going in between.
I think you're not understanding my question. Not what they're doing, or what are we requesting from them when they tell us that, hey, we can't honor this rate? Like, what do we request from them? I guess I kind of talked with some ODOT folks today, and they've been kind of over the same barrel on things with prices of items going up, but
Right.
they're requiring, for that bid process and contracts and so forth, they're requiring them to provide you some solid documentation, other than just, hey, rates are up, hey, we gotta, we can't afford this. What are they providing? What are you asking them for? To validate what they're
Right.
saying. I mean, they can say anything, but I'd like to know that you're getting documentation that's validated.
Yeah, so we're not necessarily receiving documentation from them specifically, but as you see in Rob's letter, when we're talking about the market value, we're able to look and contact different vendors and say, hey, what's your pricing look like right now? And right now, we're seeing it on average about $500 per ton.
So you so you went and got bids and have something documented to tell us?
Yeah, we reach
Not-
out, typically it's phone calls, hey, what are you seeing on your costs right now per ton? So that we have a comparison point. So it's not necessarily
the
that we're
com-
going out for a formal bid in this situation, given the price differences. But we are getting obviously some backup for our decision-making.
Verbal backup, you're not asking for documentation. I guess if you have any documentation, I'd like to see it to back up what they're saying, because it seems like maybe this is becoming a trend, since we just had 2 pieces of legislation passed, one 2 weeks ago, we have another one sitting, and then Now this, I would just like to know, I'd like to know we're doing our homework and we're documenting it. And if we're not going out for bid, like Jeff said, it's under 50,000, but, I think we need to make sure we have better documentation to validate what they're telling us or what we're seeing out in the market. Because all markets are different, right? Depending on where we are in the state of Ohio. I thought you would agree with that. So if you can get me some of that information, I'd appreciate that.
Is that information that you only want, or you want that to go to all of council?
Does anybody else on council want it?
That's a question to ask council. Mr.
Share it.
Helmut says yes, Mr. Palmer?
Share it with everybody, I say.
Yeah. I mean, I think any information you should receive, Ms. Frishy, so should everybody else. Mr. Russell?
So a point was made that Lind is not honoring their contract with the city. And I'm reading Rob's letter, and it says that we had contracted with Lind for calendar year 2022, and that they are eligible to extend it, but it's not mandatory. By saying they are eligible to extend, I wouldn't believe that means that they must extend. That just means we have an option to extend. Is Lind really reneging on an existing contract, or is the letter in fact accurate, and that just they are opting not to extend at that price?
You are correct. They are not, stepping back on their contract. They had the option to renew, and as we all do, we reevaluate what the cost of doing business is, and they're saying we can no longer hold that same price. But if you want to extend, here's a new price. We went out, talked to a couple of different, vendors and said, does it make sense for us to enter into a new contract and go through a new bid? They all said, look, our cost is more than they're offering you. You might as well take that one. And that's what we're proposing to you tonight.
Thank you.
Ms. Frishy?
And I was referencing more than just this situation. I was referencing the last 2 weeks' meeting. And so on top of that, if you can also give me the contracts, the old ones, just so I can understand, so we learn from these kind of contracts without clauses, I'd like that as well. And if anybody on council would like it, they're welcome to that too.
I've asked council, does anybody else would like that information?
We'll just blanket share things with everybody when we have that information.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding acquisition of Bank Street and East Hobart Street properties.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed. Committee reports.
The Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom was referred a request from Michael Stoner to vacate a portion of the east-west alley from South Blanchard Street to Graceland Avenue, bounded between lots 5391 and 5392 in the Leisure Addition. This request was tabled during the August 11th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. We recommend denial of the request.
Ms. Frishy?
Am I allowed to speak, or do I have to make a motion
We
first?
need to have a motion and a second, then discussion.
I'd make a motion to deny the committee report.
The motion is defeated due to lack of a second. Mr. Russell?
Make a motion to accept the committee report.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Discussion. Ms. Frishy?
So the reason I made the motion to deny the committee report since the beginning of our discussion from the property owners being here was for a number of reasons. I'm not sure what all was going on with with the committee reports submitted. I understand that Grant updated them now, but he took the August 11th meeting, he just changed the date on it and was putting minutes in from their discussion. And then he gave his notes regarding the recommendation. What you don't know that happened in that committee, I came to that committee with documented information. Obviously, the property owners shared that with you as well because I had shared it with them. So to share with you, first of all, it was my first meeting on planning and zoning. I was not there for the first one, unfortunately. I had a prior engagement. I did not think it was going to be a big deal because alley vacations happen, as many of you know, all the time on city council. So when it got denied, I took a trip out to that property and met with the property owners, and I toured the alley. And I was also made aware that Dennis Heldman went out and toured the alley as well, or at least drive-bys or whatever. He did, yeah, walked it. There you go. But I could tell from the discussion and so forth that there was, I'll call it drama that was taking place, which it's none of our business what the drama is in the community. I know Beth Warnicki came and I was not there, but what was shared with me from the first meeting that she was very adamant that this alley not be vacated because she had interest in it and used to live there. From there, I went ahead, it was Balloon Fest weekend, and I took their petition where they had the signatures and agreements for their requests that they made, which meets the requirements on the application. I did not go to those property owners, but I went to all other property owners and personally knocked on their door. I had paperwork, which you can see in their packet, where I stopped, I visited. The reason I gave 3 options was vacate the entire alley because that was the preference of Planning Commission. I asked people if they would support the vacation as requested for that 200 and some feet, or if people were against it altogether. None of this information was discussed. Nobody asked me to show it to them. I didn't get the respect to share that information. But as you can see, and the reason I gave the alley as requested, I had also talked with the street department because there is a tree in the tree brush grow up mess. I don't know what Dennis laughs at me, but towards the Graceland side that prohibits people from getting all the way through, right? So I said, is there something we can do? And he says that they would be willing to take that tree out if they could get to it, which would make the access available on the Graceland side. So when I talked to property owners, first I explained to them, because of the quote unquote drama happening in the neighborhood and miscommunication, that is an alley, that is a utility alley. It can never not be accessed for AEP. And that was some of the concerns, so I eased that concern. People were worried because they couldn't get out the other direction. And when I said I had talked to our street department on this situation to see if there was anything that we could do, and when I was told that that was an option, I shared that, and people said, well, if we can do that, then I'm okay with it. And then I also asked people, when I took this paper around, I said, I don't want to, I want to know what you need for your property. So if the thing is they need access to trim a tree or get to the back of their property for landscaping, whatever it means, that was the concern. And I said to the property owners, if you can access off of Graceland, would that be acceptable? All but 2 of the property owners that I spoke to said yes. So I think that is, first of all, it's not my ward. Second of all, I think that's me trying to find a give and take because the property owner did what was requested. And in that meeting, additionally, I brought up the fact that the alleys that were vacated north and south, according to when I talked to engineering and Denise got the information on that old ordinance that was from the 50s, I think, it appears that the ordinance needs a legal opinion on whether that alley was vacated all the way through or if it stopped and went. According to what engineering kind of said it appeared to them, it looked like it vacated all the way through already. So if that is the case, if we follow city ordinance, then that's vacated already. If we go off the county auditor's page, they did not vacate through the middle of it. So their interpretation may have been different. Who is right? That's a legal opinion, not mine. And then from there, the third thing was the fact that I didn't have to go very far back. And in 2014, we had a property owner on 3rd Street who requested a partial alley vacation. And the part that's important for all of council to understand, because I think we all want to treat all of our citizens equal and the same, and we don't want to set a precedence where we do a quote unquote favor for one and not the other, is that this alley on 3rd Street had a request to vacate because the property owner used the alley as their driveway. There was nothing else stated in the Planning Commission minutes. They denied that, but Judy Scrimshaw, as he said, stated everybody needs to be in agreement, and in the minutes you will see that the property owner says, that's not going to happen, okay? So the reasoning these petitioners are being given that in that committee meeting was because we want to follow Planning Commission and that their recommendation is the entire alley. Well, that was their recommendation, but in 2014, you went against Planning Commission, which is okay. It's fine. It's okay. But if you do it for one, with the exact, there is nothing different. And these property owners they asked Grant Russell specifically to answer the question of why he made the motion and why the committee passed it, and he refused to answer the question. And to my knowledge, he has still not answered that question for those property owners. He has not answered it for me. And at this point, in my opinion, as an elected official, we cannot treat some people one way and others another way. This is an exact example of the Matthias LaGuire situation that we had, where it was a partial alley vacation. Not all were in agreement. Planning Commission denied it and council denied it. But then we had Grant Russell and 4 others decide to vacate it anyway and cause a hardship. These people's hardship is safety for their children. It is 200 feet. It is not a property grab. It is not a land grab. They want to put up a chain. Yes, they can change that someday, but AEP can run something over if it is something in their way to maintain a utility. I think they've been talking with their neighbors. They want to slow the traffic down and discourage people from using an unimproved alley. And lastly, we recently, actually I did as well, one of my first alley vacations since coming back onto council was Cherry Street vacation. Another example for you.
I'm sorry, but you're, per council rules, you're limited to 10 minutes. You're currently at that. Unless council approves you to continue, I'm gonna have to cut you off. It's considered filibustering if you go above and beyond that.
It was.
Ms. Warnicki.
Okay. I just want to state that I do agree with the denial of this request by City Planning Commission and the Zoning Committee due to my knowledge of the property itself. We lived on 6th Street for 12 years. Actually, the neighbors who were at the City Planning Commission are neighbors from when we were there. The neighborhood has not changed on at least 3 or 4 of those. I mean, the 2 people to the east, the person to the west, and the person to behind us are all still the same neighbors from when we lived there. The alley that runs between 5th and 6th Street from Graceland to Blanchard was put in when that neighborhood subdivision housing development, I mean, whatever you want to call that grouping of houses there, was put in and created. It's there for the people living on 5th and 6th Street to be able to access their backyards. For example, while we lived there, we brought in a hot tub. And also one time, I think we brought in a load of dirt for rose beds because the people who lived there before us were on the garden tour. Because that neighborhood was built that way, with an alley to allow these people access to their backyards, the spacing between the houses is unable to be traversed, say with a pickup truck or anything, to be able to get to the backyard. I've spoken to the neighbors who use this alley, and it's infrequent but needed. I spoke to Barbara Dukes, who lived beside us just this afternoon. They've had tree trimmers back there. They put in a deck. They also had a Generac here in the last year or so. My husband and I drove by there this afternoon to check this out for tonight's discussion. I believe if you would have people driving at high rates of speed, flying, etc., as was in the letter that we got today, that you would see big ruts in the grass. I did not see that. As for the children's and pets' safety, I'm sure that no one wants to see children hurt. However, I believe this is the same responsibility of a parent as to keeping the child from running out into Blanchard, which is also a busy street. The alley is available for people to drive through and should not be regulated by the demands of the people who chose to purchase a property on that alley, knowing that the alley was there. Also, as referenced in that letter from the other gentleman in the neighborhood, screaming at your neighbors, his words, not mine. I did hear that from one of the other neighbors, however, as they drive through, seems to me possibly a neighborhood feud or spat that cannot be resolved by city council. So I believe, as a person elected by the city, that we must make decisions in the best interest of all the citizens we serve. And I cannot vote to satisfy one person's request by taking away the rights of all the other 8 citizens who live in the homes. There's 18 homes on 5th and 6th Street that alley was meant to service between Blanchard and Graceland.
Ms. Fishy.
Thank you for that. It sounds to me that you have a conflict to make a vote on accepting this committee report, since you are so tied from living there and so close with those neighbors. The other thing I would say, we're not in the business of dealing with neighborhood spats. We're in the business of doing an application that's been sent to us, addressing that application and the issue that's brought before us. It's not our job to get in between neighborhood spats. And lastly, I appreciate her statements, and those property owners would still have access to their property from Graceland. There is no hardship for those property owners. The petition is for 200 plus feet, and they're going to put a chain up or whatever to make sure that AEP can still get through. They say that they're okay working with their neighbors, and the main goal is to slow the traffic down. I will lastly say, on the south end of or on the east side of the alley, I talked to property owners who are upset because they're getting a lot of shady vehicles coming in from that direction and things going on. So some of those people would also like to have the whole alley vacated, but they're looking at this property owner's request as being reasonable.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the committee report say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
The committee report is adopted.
Okay, so legislation.
I'm sorry. Legislation. We will start with the resolutions.
First reading for Resolution 26, 2022. A resolution approving the expenditures made by the Auditor's Office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Mr. Wobster.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 26, 2022.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of Resolution 26, 2022, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Sorry, Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 27, 2022. A resolution transferring funds within appropriated funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hellman.
Motion to approve Resolution 027.
I'm sorry, this needs 3 readings. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
You can interrupt.
this resolution needs 3 readings. Mr. Russell.
This is a simple accounting from one fund to another, something we generally move through on suspended readings, and therefore I would make a motion that council's statutory rules be suspended, and this resolution 027-2022 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Hi.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman?
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this resolution its second and third reading.
Resolution 27, 2022. Resolution 27, 2022.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of Resolution 27, 2022, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
And Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2022-81 as amended.
Mr. Hellman.
Move to approve ordinance 2022-081.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of ordinance 2022-081, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2022-87, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contractor contracts for the West Lincoln Street Storm Sewer Project number 355-21700, appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2022-89, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
So this is a project that's been working through, and then we had some issues that required a little bit more study. Jeremy explained this in his letter in the last meeting, and they kind of need to get this moving. It needs one more reading. The amount is minor. The project has been in our long-term CapEx, and therefore I move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2022-089 be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer. Aye. Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its third reading.
Ordinance 2022-89.
Mr. Baumann.
Move for adoption.
Second, Mr. Russell. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2022-90. Oh, Mr.
Sorry, Mr. Russell, did you have a question? Oh, okay.
His hand was up. I apologize. Second reading for ordinance 2022-90, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contractor contracts for the development of individual sleeping quarters at each of the city of Findlay, Ohio fire stations, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Chief Eberly contacted me after the previous meeting to discuss this and said that there's some lead time with the materials they need to build this out, and they would like to get on with the planning and the purchasing of this if there's no objection. For those reasons, I'd motion that the council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2022-090 be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Baumann. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted. or wait, that was suspension. I'm sorry, the rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its third reading.
Ordinance 2022-90.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2022-090.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. Discussion. Mr. Wobser.
Chief, what was the total number on this? What are we looking at? I can't remember from last week, the budget number. Or Jeremy or anybody else that's got a,
Yeah, with everything, and I had a little contingency in there. I think with all his numbers and stuff, it's like 41 or 42,000.
so you're keeping it below 50?
Yes.
We're not.
Well, it's not all one. That includes asbestos removal, which was like $7,000. And I can get you the breakdown on that, but that's not all one company. There's many components with that.
Okay, but we're not bidding it out, is my point.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2022-91, and ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2022-94, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director of the City of Findlay, Ohio, to waive the formal advertising and bidding requirements and enter into a contract or contracts with Caris LLC for the purchase of liquid sodium permanganate needed by the City of Findlay, Ohio for calendar year 2023 and declare an emergency. I was hoping they pass it. First reading for ordinance 2022-95, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
An opportunity to accept grant money and get it to use. That's one I'd like to do ASAP. Therefore, I make the motion that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2022-095 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2022-95, ordinance 2022-95.
Ms. Warnicki.
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-95.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2022-96, and ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
This is pretty regular business that we suspend on this, on the revolving loan fund administration. Therefore, I'd make a motion that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2022-096 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki? Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye. The the rules have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2022-96, ordinance 2022-96.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2022-096.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
And Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2022-97, An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a real estate purchase agreement with Remington Arms for the purchase of properties located on Bank Street and East Hobart Street and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2022-98. An ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2022-99. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the municipal bridge inspection program and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Jeremy, a question for, is this something, there we go. Jeremy, is this something that you want or need now? Is there a timeline involved that make us want to suspend for this?
I would, if you could suspend tonight, since it is a free program with ODOT, I don't want to lose the opportunity. And the letters sent to us was as soon as possible.
Say no more. With those, for that reason, I would make a motion that ordinance 2022-099 be given its second and third reading.
Second, everybody. Second, Mr. Baumann. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended. The clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2022-99. Ordinance 2022-99.
Mr. Palmer.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2022-99.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2022-100. An ordinance authorizing the service safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to waive the formal advertising and bidding requirements and enter into a contract or contracts with Lindy Incorporated for the purchase of liquid carbon dioxide needed by the city of Findlay, Ohio for calendar year 2023 and declaring an emergency.
Old business. New business. Ms. Mayor.
I will be quick, as I know it's been a long meeting, and many of us have been in meetings a lot together today. So just a couple of quick items, and we did have the Appropriations Committee meeting earlier this evening to review ARPA projects, one thing that had been discussed, and Ms. Frishy brought it up again. So I will send out an email to all of council with some general guidelines related to the ARPA guidance, though we don't have to specifically tie back to that, given the standard allowance that we took with the revenue replacement. We do want to continue to tie our projects back to that. But if you would like to reach out to your citizens or talking through individuals in the community and have project ideas, please feel free to filter those back to me, and our team will evaluate if those can be incorporated in the next round of funding requests. Additionally, just wanted to call out the replacement page in the Remington Arms agreement. It was just a wrong version was included and did not include the most recent updates, which specifies that the seller would cover all of the closing costs. So they are taking over all of that. We are still working through with them. They're in the process of completing the phase 1. Additionally, the Taylor Street properties were demolished today, so if you have the opportunity to drive through that area, it looks a lot different. So I would encourage you to do that, making good progress there. And finally, I will follow up with the residents this evening. I know it was a frustrating process, but one step I'll be happy to submit that Jeremy and I thought of when we were sitting over there is that would qualify as a spot where we could put a no through traffic sign up, at least in the meantime, as we continue to evaluate other steps. I think that was it from my standpoint. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other new business? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, who was it? Mr. Niemeyer.
We still have a meeting next Tuesday? Weren't we having a mid-year review?
Right, and that, wasn't the time changed on that? But wasn't the time changed?
Yeah, we moved. I've got it listed at 4:00 p.m.
I have 4 o'clock.
That would be good, Jim. Please show up. Yeah, that'd be great. No, so it did move, Mr. Niemeyer. So we are pre-budget and mid-year financial update Tuesday, September 27th, in this room at 4:00 p.m. No. Oh, yes, that's committee of the whole.
If anybody is not going to attend, just let me know. I've had a couple that I know can't, but that way I can let Mr. Stashak know. Any other new business? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. First, Mr. Palmer, second, Mr. whoever. Who said that up there? Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Any opposed, nay. We are adjourned.